This friend and a few of his college buddies were going on a similar ghost hunt themselves and had heard about some graveyards where children murdered by their mother had been buried. The graveyard was located off the main road, so my friend parked his car on the side of the road, and the group, 5 to 7 people I believe, got out and followed the small path through the woods for a couple minutes to get to the graveyard. Once there, nothing exciting happened for the first 10 minutes or so, and they had tried everything the website or wherever they heard the story told them to do, with nothing resulting. They got bored, and being typical, inebriated college kids, started taunting the supposed ghost of the mother. This continued for a few minutes before they got tired, and decided to go back to the car as one of the girls had to go to the bathroom. Once they got back to the car, my friend, the sober driver, tried opening the handle without unlocking the car because he hadn't locked it in the first place, but found it locked. He attributed this to a bad memory at the time. The group drove home, laughing and talking like normal. After he had dropped all the others off at their homes, he went back to his own house. He got in at the same time as one of his roommates, who stopped and waited for him to pull in. The roommate had his phone out and shined the light in the window when his friend pulled in as a joke. What he saw was tiny, baby-sized handprints all over the windows. As soon as my friend got out, he went into the house without saying a word to the roommate. The roommate, confused, went back to the car and tried to rub one of the handprints. They were on the inside of the window. To this day, my friend will not speak of his drive home after he dropped off his other friends, and has since sold the car without ever driving it again. My brother once lived in a flat in downtown Mount Clemens, Michigan. The Clem was known to be a hot spot for baths back in the Depression era and was booming with activity. Nowadays it has some run-down parts. This is where my brother rented his flat. It was a giant old raggedy house that was now separated into multiple odd apartments. Anyway, long story short, he always admitted to odd experiences, cabinet doors opening up, and things missing, but one peculiar oddity was that he was always missing boxers/underwear from his drawer. He admitted that he thought his house was haunted and that the ghost had a crush on him. Never anything violent or disturbing, just odd things. Later on, he starts dating his future ex-wife. She starts coming around, and he notices that the oddities begin to increase. New oddities began to occur. His girlfriend would always find her shoes, which were left on a mat inside the apartment, outside the door on the patio in the morning. She'd always comment to my brother to stop putting her shoes outside. He had an idea of why but didn't want to frighten her. Besides, it wasn't hurting anyone, right? Well, things started getting worse. He came home from work, and his girlfriend was staying there while he was gone, claiming that the stove burner kept lighting itself. She'd walk into the kitchen, and it would be lit. She'd turn it off, and shortly later it'd be lit again. Then, one night, my brother wakes up in the middle of the night and sees his girlfriend sitting at the end of the bed. Not only sees but feels her near his feet, staring at him. He calls out for her to come back to bed, but she doesn't respond, so he calls out louder, telling her to come to bed and asking, "What's wrong?" His girlfriend then asks what he's doing. He turns and saw that she's sleeping next to him. He turns back. No one is at the end of the bed. Now, he's freaked out but doesn't want to scare his girlfriend from coming over to his place. A few nights later, they're both sleeping and he wakes up to his girlfriend screaming. He looks over and she's sleeping but thrashing around holding onto her neck. He doesn't see anything, so he starts yelling and shaking her to wake her up. After a few shakes, she wakes up crying and terrified. She starts telling my brother about how real her dream felt, that a woman was strangling her, telling her to get out, that she doesn't belong there and to leave her man alone. Her neck had red marks on it, possibly from herself trying to defend herself, but they believed it to be from something else. My brother then comes clean with her, then decides to do some research and find out that the address that they live in was an old brothel back in the day that the rich bathers used to stay in. My brother lived in that house for a few more weeks before he could locate a new place. She never came back to stay the night though, and he never experienced anything aggressive while there. Still, kinda fucked up though. I know my brother and I can tell when he's lying. This shit was legit, and when she talked about it, you could see how shaken up she was. I have several stories from when I worked as a mortuary transport tech. The job was basically transporting the deceased from where they were to where they needed to go. Turns out dead people can have a lot of appointments. One time though, I had an experience I've never forgotten. I was dropping someone off at the science donation place. This is when you donate your body to science, and they take it from there. So I wheeled in the deceased, unlocked the freezer, and did all my stuff I had to do in there. I placed him on the board, got the lift out, and placed him on the shelf. The interesting thing about the freezer was that most everything, once it's processed, was wrapped in this blue tape type thing, and you could definitely tell what was inside. Legs, hands, feet, etc. Kind of interesting to me at the time. Anyway, I shut the freezer and locked it back up, and started wheeling the gurney back over to the garage door. The science drop-off and processing area was a big L shape, with the freezer off to the larger long portion, and then you turn the corner, and there's desks and filing cabinets and whatnot. I almost had a heart attack as I turned the corner, and there's just this guy standing there examining files in the file cabinet. Looked just like you or me, dressed modernly, but out of place for what people normally wear back there. I stopped and said that he'd have to forgive me, but he almost gave me a heart attack. It didn't look like he heard me at all, or even knew I was there. I should mention this was also about 1 a.m., and I'd never seen anyone at the place this late. So I said, well, sorry if I startled you or anything, and went on about my finishing stuff. Got the gurney back in the van, closed and locked the large garage door from the inside, all the while this guy is just standing there, staring at an open file in front of him, not paying any attention to me. I had to use the bathroom, so I told him that's where I'd be going and I'd be right back. Again, no response. I thought maybe he's deaf and couldn't hear me. So I went to the bathroom, and came back to the garage, and the guy is gone but the file cabinet is still open. I didn't know where he went, and I hadn't heard anyone walk down the hallway past the bathroom. I checked and made sure everything I was responsible for was still locked, and it was. So I just announced that I was going to be leaving and locking up to set the alarm. No response. And that's what I did, and left. I'm not sure who he was, or is, or what happened. But it was definitely an odd experience, and one I still remember perfectly. My grandfather was extremely sick in the days leading up to his death. He'd worked with asbestos for all his working life and had an extremely debilitating form as a result of it. He couldn't speak, and he hadn't spoken for a month leading up to his death. He couldn't even communicate. On the day of his death, he looked at my mother and said, "The angel is back." My mother was stunned. She asked what he meant, and he said the angel is back, and this time he wants me to come with him. My mother looked at the corner of the room where he was looking, turned back to him, and said, "Dad, there's nobody there." He didn't respond. He died that night. That was 20 years ago, and my mother never spoke of it again. She told me the story when I was old enough, just like she told my brothers, but my sister never got to the age where she was old enough. She succumbed to her disease when she was 7, after battling it her entire life. And on the days leading up to her death, she kept speaking about this butterfly who would visit her. My brothers and I would sit with her and nod along. We kind of just thought she'd developed this imaginary friend to help her through what she was struggling with. One day, she shot up and told us the butterfly is back, and he wants me to follow him. I saw my mother's face drop. She'd made the decision not to tell my sister she was dying, and my sister just believed she was going through a rough patch like she often did, not that the doctors had told my mother it was terminal. But my sister said in the next second, "I'm going to die, aren't I?" That's what the butterfly said. He told me I'm going to die. My mother admitted to her that, yes, she was going to die. She said, "Oh, okay," then laid down and died, with my brothers, my mom and I cuddling her in bed. I don't know what I believe about the afterlife, but I have to think there must be one. That there's some truth behind the legend of the Grim Reaper, that at some point, something comes to lead all of us away from life. Because otherwise, I have no way of coming to terms with what I've experienced.